From the Funkmaster accusing Dana White of calling him the bad guy, to Chael Sonnen defending him by calling him the most disrespected world champion ever. Here's the real reason why Aljamain Sterling went off at Dana. Let's start off with why Aljo said White's making him out to be the bad guy. Because nobody likes being called that, especially by the president of the UFC. So, what happened was, Sterling verbally agreed to fight against Sean O'Malley at UFC 292, but after that, he complained about some injuries and said that because of them, he might need them to delay the fight. This clearly rubbed Dana the wrong way, because at a press conference after UFC Vegas 73, the president let off some steam. By that, I mean he was clearly annoyed at Sterling, calling him someone who can't get out of their own way. The Funkmaster did not let that slide and went off in a YouTube video where he said that Dana actually put him in a situation, basically strong-armed him into accepting the fight, and then went and painted him out to be the bad guy. Aljo didn't like how the man went and said this in public either, because he could have easily talked to him in private about it. That wasn't it though. Oh no, the bantamweight champion full-on ranted and gave Dana a whole list of things he's done for the UFC. According to him, if White wanted to talk about him publicly, he could have at least given him a heads up and got him in on the joke. Sterling went on about how he's gone through training camps, beat Peter Yan, TJ Dillashaw, even Henry Cejudo, all with a torn bicep. He said he laid his nuts on the table and wanted credit where it was due. On top of that, he went on to say that Dana White is two-faced. Boy, I wouldn't want to get on the Funkmaster's bad side, because this rant was fire. Apparently, Uncle Dana is super nice to him behind closed doors, so Aljo was confused and hurt when the president dissed him at the press conference because he thought White made him look like someone who flakes. He made it very clear that while contracts are just a formality, he would never agree to a fight and not show up. In fact, the fighter said how that kind of thing doesn't even happen that often. Despite all his issues with his torn bicep tendon, Sterling told his viewers to go as far as to ask Dana about agreeing to fight Dillashaw. So, think what you want, but he said he's a man of his word, which is true. Just look at how he showed up and won each time. What's more, the Funkmaster said he didn't ask for much, he just wants more time to rest between his last fight with Cejudo and the one with O'Malley. He talked about his injuries on his Weekly Scraps podcast, and they do sound pretty serious. I mean, if your shins are mushy to the point where you can squeeze them and leave a whole handprint, you gotta get that taken care of. After he laid out his history of wins, he straight up said he wanted respect from the president, even going as far as asking him to call him awesome, the way he's called Conor McGregor awesome for his achievements. As for Uncle Dana, well, he called Sterling's comments ridiculous. It's getting hot and heavy up in here, folks. The president sat down with Fansided exclusively to talk about the drama. And when he found out about what Aljo said, he straight up said it was ridiculous for the fighter to say he doesn't get enough credit. Dana had a problem with how Sterling was promoting the fight, and how he was saying things like, "If my body will hold up." According to him, you shouldn't agree to a fight at all if you know you won't be up for it. He explained his comments at UFC Vegas 73, saying that the first thing everyone asked him was whether Sterling was going to fight or not. Henry Cejudo even called him that day and told him he'll take the fight from Aljo's hands since he heard that the fighter wanted more time, and from his perspective, Da Funkmaster was just making excuses to bail. Uncle Dana's stance is that it's Sterling's fault for making those comments, because they made the fans think he's just not gonna fight at all. All that in mind, he denied the claims that he was disrespecting the bantamweight champ. But there's one more thing. He threatened an interim match too. Yep, he said it up front. He'll gladly have someone else fight and do the interim, which would be bad news for Sterling. The thing is, he's not the only one forcing Sterling to fit his schedule, because Sean O'Malley made a very shady tweet about it. Nobody was surprised to see him take Dana's side. What with Aljo and him being rivals, and the fact that he's known to have the Dana White privilege, the fighter took to Twitter to poke fun at his enemy, saying that August is too soon for a fight, how about July? This was an obvious dig at Sterling's comments about his injury, and of course fans caught the shade. Some of them even replied that he's just plain scared of Aljo, who clapped right back, of course. He quoted the tweet just an hour later by calling him "Shane, I ain't about that life. I need more time, O'Malley." Okay, so first of all, he literally called him Shane. And second, he was referring to the time Suga kept refusing bantamweight title shots, even though he was getting opportunities left, right, and center. If you thought this was it, you're in for a surprise, because this Twitter exchange was just the beginning. Yep, O'Malley went on the Timbo Sugar Show and slammed Sterling for wanting more time, saying that he can just rest for 2 months and then train hard for the other 2, claiming it wasn't science, just discipline, something he indirectly accused Aljo of not having. As for the fight schedule, he said he simply called up Dana and listened to what he told him to do. And no, he didn't call him Daddy Dana, like how Aljo said he did. To top it off, he brought Israel Adesanya into it, saying that if he could fight 4 times in a year, Sterling can too. And to that, well, the Funkmaster called him a moron and confirmed the fight. He had a little Neil deGrasse Tyson moment on Twitter, where he said that it's not actually science, but math, and that he's looking at the money involved. He went on to say that the real reason he's doing the fight isn't to prove something to O'Malley. It's not even for the fans. It's all because Dana White will cut the check for him on the scheduled date. And by now, that's what matters most to him. This wasn't all that he said. He also trash-talked his opponent a lot, calling him a guy who smoked away all his brain cells. He even brought up the fact that while he fought 3 times in 13 months, O'Malley only fought once. With a heavy helping of sarcasm, he told his rival that he wants to be just like him when he grows up, and that he's such a freaking badass. If anything, all this drama that started with Dana White is amping up to a killer fight. So it's about time these two get to fight it out in the cage, right? Plus, it'll be a great opportunity for Aljo to prove Dana's comments wrong. Besides, Da Funkmaster isn't the only person who thinks he deserves more respect. Chael Sonnen backed him up too. I mean, of course he did. We all know Sonnen has a lot to say about everything. He agreed with Aljo in a YouTube video where he said he's never seen a more disrespected world champion, like ever, and that fans only hate him because of how he won against Peter Yan via disqualification. According to Chael, even the UFC officials and members were mad about it, and he just couldn't understand why, because after all, Yan did violate the rules with the illegal knee. On top of that, he gave Sterling kudos for defeating Cejudo, since it takes a lot of talent to beat one of the greatest combat athletes of all time. He even went as far as to say that the UFC brought Cejudo back just to watch him lose to Sterling. Putting all that into perspective, Sonnen was pretty confused as to why everyone, especially Dana White, was bashing Aljo, because to him, disrespecting a world champion like that makes no sense at all. So, from Chael Sonnen backing the Funkmaster up in the drama, to Sterling accusing the UFC president of making him out to be the bad guy, this was the real reason why Aljamain Sterling went off at Dana White.